Hi everyone, welcome back to the YAM podcast. My name is Haghbin. In today's episode, I am interviewing my very own sister-in-law. God did not bless me with any sisters of my own, but he gave me two brothers who can marry other women. Woohoo! So I have two sister-in-laws actually, and not only did I win two fabulous sister-in-laws, they each come from all-girl families, and so they have two sisters each. And so actually, because I did not have any sisters, I now have like 6 sisters. I have 0 brother-in-laws, guys. And what is super fascinating with having sister-in-laws is that it's so intimate. You get to see an intimate side of things because you're by default with your brothers and with your nephews and nieces, and it's really beautiful. And you get to see and grow with women who almost like you want to say you didn't know them up until this time, until they like joined your family, but then they become like not only blood but just like enmeshed in every corner and crevice of your life. And it's really sweet to be so influenced and affected by complete strangers almost in a way, but then just like literally they become parts of you. Like I can't even remember the type of woman I was before my sister-in-laws because they each taught me so much just about being girls, being women. I think I taught them a lot about also makeup and hair. It's fascinating how when you don't have any sisters, you literally have to watch everything on YouTube, and somehow I ended up learning some things that they also wanted to learn. So it's awesome. In this episode, Asiyih is sharing her experience of motherhood, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. I'm just gonna let you guys listen to it. Woohoo! Hi everyone, welcome to the YAM podcast. My name is Haghbin and I am your host. And today we have a lovely guest, my very own sister-in-law, who's going to be talking about all things motherhood. Welcome, my love.
Hi, so nice to be here.
So I have the privilege of being able to see how you mother on a very intimate level. I get to see boobies. I get to see skin. I get to see my nephews. I get to see fights. I get to see playtimes. I get to see the day-to-day things that you try to remind them over and over again. And I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but it's something that for me, this is the closest form of motherhood that I get to see on a day-to-day basis. When I see you doing anything, it's like as if I'm taking like solid notes of what to do when I have kids. And so I want to go back so I have 2 nephews, you have 2 boys. And I want to go back to the beginning. So what was it like for you as a first-time mother? And what was that whole process like?
Yeah, well, thanks, Nahal. I just want to say first, before I answer your question, that it's really wonderful to have you as an auntie or gugu for the boys, and I feel honored that we can be, test ground or whatever for motherhood, so you can see how it's done. And I definitely make mistakes, but I'm learning from them. That's what motherhood's all about. So yeah, being a first time mom, I think for anyone for their first kid, it's a big change. Like you go from being just you and your spouse to now your whole world is revolving around another human being. And automatically, like so much, like I feel like as soon as you become a mom, you become like, I always say like moms become like super people because your whole world, yourself doesn't really matter that much anymore. Like your whole world revolves around this little tiny being that you're trying to keep alive and survive and thrive. um so yeah, I think for me it was, we were excited. I prepared a lot. We did like birthing classes. I read a lot. My sister has 2 kids. She had them before I gave birth to my first son.
Did you have
Um,
both of them?
Yeah, she had both of them. So, my niece is, 3 months older than Hugo,
Mm.
and, so, I mean, she was a big support, and I have her close by, and I have my parents close by, so that was really wonderful, and Niaz, my husband, your brother, was very involved, before Hugo was born, so I feel very lucky about that, like,
How
really
was he?
wanting
How was he? How was he
I
involved?
mean, he was, like, involved in, like, the birthing classes. He was, like,
Mhm.
so into like, we did, like, a hypnobirthing thing. He was so into that, like, helping me breathe and, like, helping me practice breathing. Like, we would, um, read to the baby before he was born, and we'd
Mm.
sing to the baby. So I felt, like, just really blessed and lucky to be surrounded by, supportive, nurturing people, and then to be bringing Hugo into a supportive, nurturing environment. And your parents were there when he came, and everything. So, and I felt like I was really prepared, and I'm someone that likes to be super prepared and super organized and super in control. But I think
Mm.
the hardest part for me, I mean, becoming a mom, is like realizing that there's so much out of your control. And
Mm.
the biggest thing that was a challenge for me, like, birth wasn't a big deal. And I feel like kind of guilty saying that because I know a lot of people have trouble like with labor. And but I feel very blessed that I had a healthy labor, and a very pretty quick, a relatively quick labor. And I was able to do it naturally, which is what I had wanted to do from the beginning. Um, but after he came was the hardest part, and being in the hospital, and he had jaundice, and then all the nurses coming in and out. He just like, and I feel like I just, even though I knew that, like, okay, baby had to be skin to skin for breastfeeding to work, like I did it, but I'm in this, like, fog of like just giving birth. So um I still look back and be like, is there something I could have done differently so he would have breastfed properly? But he didn't. So he never like,
Mm.
he latched, but he never like transferred the milk. I guess he just like couldn't suck properly. I don't know. And also he had jaundice, and we had to give him some bottle and some like syringe feeding stuff. We were like, oh, let's do the syringe because we don't want him to get used to the bottle. And it was like all this stressful stuff around that. So basically really the first 3 months were really stressful, like trying to figure out breastfeeding to see if it would work, and like kind of feeling like a failure,
Mm.
that like something was wrong with me, that like why he couldn't breastfeed, and like beating myself up about that. So that was really hard. And then I ended up, so we went to like physical therapy for him. We went to different doctors to try to figure out his like torticollis. He had like whatever, he had like a tongue tie. We got it clipped. Like there was like, everyone was like, oh, this is the problem. Let's fix it. Oh, that didn't work. This is the other problem. Let's fix it. That didn't work. And then I'm just like, so then I ended up just pumping for him for 6 months. Like I fed him exclusively pumping, but then after 6 months, he just needed more, and I couldn't produce it. So we ended up giving him formula. And looking back now in hindsight, knowing that my son is growing up and healthy and fine, that was just like a whole stressful thing that I'm like, I should have just given him formula to start off with. So I
Mm.
felt like, you know, it just made me realize that there's so much now with parenting today, so much pressure put on the mom to conform to a certain way. And I think in recent years, there's been so much more hype around like, you breast is best, you have to breastfeed. And like,
Mm.
moms feel bad or guilty or
Mm.
shamed, even if not like blatantly, like, subconsciously through like different
Mm.
things that we read online or different mom groups we're in, that were, if breastfeeding doesn't work out. So, yeah, my biggest learning. And then with my second son, who's now 9 months, I was like kind of worried that the same thing would happen again, but I kept telling myself that if it does, I'm just going to give him formula right away, because I couldn't see how I could like parent a toddler and a baby and be like pumping like intensely and living that kind of life. So you
Yeah.
learn through experience, and
For sure. I remember so I was doing my integrative yoga therapy training when you gave birth. And I received the beautifulest photo of all the four grandparents on the porch, all praying for you when you were in the hospital. And that was so sweet. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I really think that when families come together and they really understand the importance of family, that there's some beautiful things that it's just really nice when like things gel well. So when I arrived, it was like 2 weeks after Hugo's birth, and me being the public health person and all this like knowing about breastfeeding and working in the gynecology and obstetrics hospital, and my main job was to teach people how to breastfeed or like to tell them the importance of it. I was here with my righteous knowledge and all these things, and I was kind of like worried when you told me that you weren't breastfeeding. And this is where when I think about it, I like feel really awful that in order for you to prove to me that that's what was going on for the past 2 weeks already, and you guys have been trying and all these things, and then you were bottle feeding, you had already decided, but in order to prove to me that he really wasn't latching on, you showed me anyways that like what
I
it would
don't
have
even
been like.
remember that. That
I'm
time is
so
like
glad.
so hazy.
So happy because what ended up happening was that you got so distraught and you got so frustrated all over again. And I knew you really just wanted my approval and not to think that you were like a bad mother. And not that I was intended to do that, but it was just I couldn't understand what that meant. And I regretted that I had to be shown it in order to like understand it instead of just accepting that that was the truth. Like I needed to
Mm,
see that, like, oh, okay, like this is really distressing for the baby and for you. And that's something that I just wanted to say to like the listeners, and like if you're like a family member or you have family in this, it's something crazy that you do want your family to be like on board with you with whatever decision you have to make, but sometimes when things are just both parties, like nobody likes the fact that breastfeeding is not occurring, but then sometimes like acceptance needs to kick in like a lot sooner than allowing for like hurt to kind of happen and things like that. But yeah, I actually want to go back to sleep, 'cause I know you don't function well on no sleep. This was before you had kids, like, by 10 o'clock, you started speaking incoherently, like, we had to put you to bed, like, we knew that. But then when motherhood kicked in and then being sleep deprived, I was actually so I really didn't think I thought you were just gonna, like, literally pass out, and then we had to put, like, the baby on your boob or something like that. But you actually were like, I mean, of course, like instincts and all these things kick in, but that didn't I didn't feel like it like messed with your system as much as I thought it would. But maybe your personal experience was different. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
it's funny because yeah, I definitely value my sleep. I still value my sleep, and I look forward to the day when I can like sleep in and be able to just like feel well rested. Um, but yeah, I think it goes back to like what I said about like when you become a mom, that you just become a super more super than you were before. Like, I'm not saying like I'm like a superhero, but like, I'm super Asiyih now because I don't have, even though I'm tired, I don't let myself fall asleep and sleep through the baby crying. You just like, that that's your responsibility, and that becomes like the number one thing. That's my job, like to feed the baby. So, yeah, I think it's just, you know, motherhood brings that out of parents. And I say motherhood, I think parenthood, changes both the mom and the dad. But there's something about motherhood, like biologically, that you just forgo your past comforts because
Mm.
your baby is everything. Like,
Name
and
name some of the comforts that you give up.
sleep, like time for myself.
Mm.
And I mean, there's ways to like fit that in, but like it's not like or like what I want to do, but like really, you know, okay, yes, I'd like to sit down and watch a TV show in the middle of the day or have this snack. But what do the kids need right now? I need to like attend to that. So I think not saying that like you have to like totally self-sacrifice everything as a mother, but like it just reorients what's important. And to me, at least, all the little things, like I think it's been a big lesson in detachment. Like all those little things that I thought I needed to like have a good day or to, you know, be a full person, which I still do need. I still need them, but they're not number 1, like my number 1 priority. So
Mm.
I definitely need time for me and self-care and time for adult conversation in my life, but I wouldn't like prioritize that over taking care of my kids and what they need
Mm.
during the
Mm.
day. So, and I'm
Yeah.
sure all moms they can relate.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. So tell us a little bit about second baby and how like second baby, no problem with breastfeeding.
Yeah, yeah, so my second baby's named Theo, so I'll
Mhm.
just refer to Theo. And I
He's
think
the
a lot of
cutest.
it had to do with actually I had a home birth for
Mm.
having Theo. Hugo, my first, was born in the hospital. So Theo, I was worried. I was worried that like, oh, the same thing would happen. I think as I mentioned before, but I had mentally been like, okay, I'm gonna try, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But I think having a home birth really impacted it, at least for us. Like I can't say if it would for everybody, but I was
Can you
also
actually
lucky.
it's so
Sorry.
funny that I did not at all think about asking you about the second birth until now, and then I'm just like, "Oh my god, this is the best story ever, like, you have to tell it." Oh my gosh.
Sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
this is the
So,
reason why Niaz is here in the next if he wants to chip
oh, he
in.
loves telling this story, but I'll tell it since I'm the guest on this podcast. Okay. So I guess I want to just say so. Um, Reflecting on my the first birth experience, being in the hospital, I really felt impacted my ability to bond with Hugo and to actually establish a breastfeeding relationship. Not
Hmm.
just the jaundice, but like the nurses coming in and out, people swaddling him, taking all his vitals, taking my vitals, like blah 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 blah. So all of that after I gave birth, I think really affected it. So I had known a lot of people in my life who had home births. Our other sister-in-law and my cousin and a few other friends. My doula from my first birth, she had all her kids home birth. So like a lot of people were really recommending home births to me. And I think also because it was the pandemic, like that was like another thing. I was like, oh yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So from the beginning, I was like, felt really confirmed about having a home birth. And my biggest worry about that was that the midwife wouldn't get there on time.
Mm.
And it's funny in how your biggest fears like manifest themselves. So what happened was it was like early in the morning on Theo's actual due date, and I went into labor. And like Niaz and I were so tired and out of it. It was like 2 in the morning or something. When we called the midwife, we like I don't know, Niaz was mumbling or something, and she misunderstood like the timing of the contractions, but like they were coming fast. Like I woke up in active labor. And so I basically labored for like 3 hours, and then the baby came. And like when she finally realized that she should get in the car, I was getting ready to push. So Niaz had her on the phone,
And she was
and
45 minutes away,
she
right?
was 45 minutes away, but she stepped on it. It was like, I don't know, 4 in the morning or something. And so basically, I was getting ready to push, and she was on the phone with Diaz, and she like get her on her hands and knees, and we were in the bathroom. Hugo was sleeping in the next room, and I like literally like pushed twice, and Theo was born, and Diaz caught him, and it was just us. And his big brother was still asleep in the other room. And I had this whole plan. Like, I like to be prepared. I had this whole birth plan, like my sister was going to come, she was going to be with me, like be my doula, and my mom was going to watch Hugo, and like, and the midwife and her assistant were going to be there to catch the baby, like it was going to be all good.
Yeah.
But it ended up, working out this way. And I just feel so lucky that it was so fast, because she said afterwards that, like, a labor that happens that quickly is like a healthy labor. Like there's no
Hmm.
complications. So
Yeah.
I feel so lucky that that was the case, that he, like, everything was fine with him. And Niaz caught the baby. And then my sister came, like, it was like Niaz was like texting her. He was on the phone with the midwife. He caught the baby. He was like doing everything. He was becoming super dad. um, and
He
and
tells
then
the story with immense pride, by the
yeah.
way.
Yeah. But he was telling everyone, it was like, he was on like such like a high afterwards.
He's
But
like, I can do this. I can I can catch any baby.
he's like, oh, I can do this. Like this could be like my part-time job now. I could be like a mid-husband or whatever you call them. Um, so yeah, so anyway, my sister like comes like rushing over. She lives quite close by, so she comes rushing over, like, I guess 5 minutes after he caught the baby. And she's like, I'm here to help. What? The baby's here. And then like she helps get me to the bed and everything. And then, like, maybe 10 minutes later, the midwife comes and she helps, like, with the afterbirth, and she helps make sure we're all okay. And
Wait, I want to
yeah.
zoom in here, like, because Niaz caught the baby, and this is a part that a lot of people don't know, that the placenta is supposed to come out afterwards. So baby was still attached to mother, and they were both trying to get her from the bathroom to the bed with an umbilical cord and holding the baby and all that maneuvering with two people just trying to get like Asi's sister and Nia's like just helping her get on the bed. So then
Yeah.
when the midwife came, then you can go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So then midwife came, like, the afterbirth doesn't come like right away. So we had some time, like, and but yeah, everything was fine. Like I didn't want to like get into like graphic detail.
I did. I did. I really did. Because I think that's just like that's a part where people just don't understand. And so like people need to know if something like this happens to them, it's not done when the baby just comes. Like there's other things that need to happen
Yes,
and to
yeah.
anticipate it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess like I'm my biggest, like, if anyone's contemplating a home birth, and like especially, I felt really comfortable doing a home birth for my second child. I like for my first, I felt like, oh, I had to be in the hospital.
Mm.
But some people feel like they can do it for the first two. But I mean, if you're healthy and if you're having a healthy pregnancy, I highly, highly recommend a home birth. I don't know in China if that's a thing though. I don't think
I do
so,
not think no.
probably. Yeah.
No. Mm-mm. Maybe
So
in
I
the
felt,
villages. In the village
yeah, yeah, there's probably a
countryside.
midwife or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I felt very lucky and blessed to be able to make that choice and to be able to do it. And then, okay, so then the breastfeeding, the whole point of this story was about the breastfeeding, um, being in my like being in my own home and having whoever I wanted there, like my sister, my mom, my dad came, like, you know, my brother-in-law came, my nieces came, like everyone came to see the baby after he was born. Um, and I just think there's something about that, like being able to properly recover, take a shower, and sleep in your own bed with the baby. And my midwife even told me, she was like, if you can, like, if you have the support, just stay in your bed for like the first week, like only get up to go to the bathroom so you can properly heal and you could just focus on the baby. So, like, that's what I did. Like, Niaz and my mom brought me food. Like, so I was upstairs. I lived in my upstairs for the first week, and then, slowly made my way into the rest of the house and the rest of the world. But it was also in January, so that was a good time to like just like be
Yes.
inside and not do
Yeah.
anything. um
Snowing outside.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think that. And so like I was really worried about the breastfeeding, but like, right off the bat, he latched fine and he was able to get what he needed. So um, it was really, really wonderful. And also
Mhm.
like a big lesson for me in detachment, how like realizing how attached I was to it with my first son, and then like just letting go. And like I find when you let go, things like fall into place often, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's my really, I guess, take on, breastfeeding and
Yeah.
new motherhood.
So, what about now? I'm really interested to hear more about how, like, what are these little games that you play with my nephews? Like every morning, like, how do you set them up so that they become like super duper moral? I like really want you to tell people how you um use virtues in their names to reinforce in them certain qualities. Like, can you describe how you chose those virtues specifically, what you do to reinforce that?
Sure. Yeah. So I feel like my biggest job and the biggest service I can provide is to raise souls that are noble and kind and generous, and that can be of service to and like be of a positive impact in this crazy world that we live in. So that's my job. That's my full time job right now. And yeah, so I like, kind of orienting, like, prayer is a big thing in our family. Like we say prayers together before bed, and in the morning I started with Hugo, but I do it with both of them now. So we start our day off with prayers, and we also have been talking a lot about like gratitude. But anyway, I feel like there's a lot of stuff I do. So I'll answer your question first about I I think like maybe, yeah, early on with Hugo, maybe when he was like 6 months or something, I started just like telling him, "You are my humble, understanding, gentle, obedient boy." So like for each letter of his name, Hugo. So I chose some qualities, and so I just remind him of that every day. That he's humble, understanding, gentle, and obedient. And he's working. I mean, he does all of those things really well, but he's working a lot. We're working a lot right now in obedience, like what that looks like. um, and Theo is my truthful, humble, empathetic, and obedient boy. I think obedient is really, and they both have O's in their names, and their names are very similar. So I think it's just nice to remind them of that they are all those virtues. And I say, "Are you all those virtues?" And Hugo says, "Oh, yes." And I'm like, "Are you more?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm also grateful and kind," or something. Like he says other things that we talk about. And we talk a lot about gratitude too.
Mm.
So yeah, I think so my sister and I last year during the pandemic started every other week a virtues class. And so Hugo at that time was just a little over 2, and it's become, yeah, it's been really good. So like we sing songs, we read stories, we play a little game, and we have a coloring page about the virtue. So it's been really wonderful, I think, just to like reinforce those virtues and try to focus on practicing it like in the 2 weeks before the next class, like talking about that specific virtue. So yeah, really thinking about these like the virtues and cultivating those within my children, and kind of just recognizing them when I see Hugo or Theo demonstrating that.
Can you tell us about the jar activity that you do?
Oh yeah, so I haven't done that actually recently. They were like acts of kindness, little acts of kindness that we put in a jar. And last year Hugo did it. Like he would pick out one and we'd choose it. So like help mommy sweep the floor, or give someone a flower, or say hi, like very simple things for a toddler to be able to do. But now I've been doing, actually brought it. Um, Service jars. He's bigger. He's able to do stuff like this. So
Yeah.
I made like a 9-pointed star, and every time he does an act of service, he gets a sticker. at first it was like just get 9 and fill this up, and then he could get like a special treat or reward. But now we're like trying to fill up the whole thing. So, and we're not that great about it anymore, but I think that's a good thing because he now just is like learning to do it. And I just get so happy. Like, there's been times where he's like, "Mommy, how can I help you?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm doing something right."
Oh
And
my
so
God.
I think that's my goal, to just make it like a normal part of who he is.
Yeah.
Um, and
He's the
so
sweetest, by the way. He's very Just so you know, my sister-in-law and my brother dress him up like a little gentleman, and he is so posh. He has the most beautiful clothes I have ever seen in my life, and he's, like, literally he's in these, like, sweater vests and things like that, and he just looks so dapper, but he also has the personality to, like, match it. So he's, like, very you, like, really reinforce that in him to, like, say that you are a gentleman. I just remember, like, you instilling the good masculine qualities in him. You would, like, reinforce that over and over again.
yeah,
I
I
also
mean, I think it's hard to raise boys, and
Why is that hard to raise
well,
boys,
I
Aussie?
mean, I just feel like, I mean, I grew up with sisters, so, and I thought
Yes.
I'd always have a girl, like, so it's, I mean,
Yes.
not that it's not hard to raise boys. I mean, I feel like I'm very blessed with very sweet boys, but I meant to say, in today's world, we need to raise gentlemanly boys, and like boys who respect and love women, boys who are kind, boys who know that it's okay to cry and be sensitive, all of those things. And so I do think it's interesting. My cousin shared with me like this book about raising boys, and it divided like boyhood into 3 parts. And the first part is from 0 to 6, and that's the time, according to this book, that boys are closest to their mother. They learn from their mother, and they learn how to love. So I was like, yes, that's what I'm like. That's what's happening in our family. So, um, and then like from 6 to 14, that's when they are like forming a bond with their father, and they're learning how to be like a
A
man
man.
in the world.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then from 14 onwards, that's when they really need mother and father, but also mentors in their lives. And I
Mm.
just felt like those even periods, like I haven't read the whole book, but just that part of it, like rang really true to me. And it just made me think like, okay, like we just need to make sure that that's like what they're getting at those times in their life. So,
Yeah, there's a book that I was reading called The King, the Warrior, the Magician, and the Lover. And these are 4 archetypes of the masculine. And I was reading it mainly because to heal my own masculine energies, because every man or woman, they have both qualities. The women have both masculine and feminine, and the men have both masculine and feminine. And I knew that the masculine part of myself was quite active, but it was the dark or immature side of masculine that resided in me. And so I was reading this book really mainly for myself, but it really helped me understand not only my own brother's father, and also it really helped me if I like in the sense that if I were to raise boys, like that it emphasized the importance of ritual. And when men go from boys to men, that one of the things that is really lacking in society right now is this lack of ritual. So that boys just end up staying boys forever
mm,
and they never step into manhood, which we have several examples of these in our surrounding. And so it's just interesting to that moment of ritual where literally like in the olden days it's like when the boy was taken away from his mother and I'm not saying the word right.
circumcised.
Circumcised, geez, circumcised, but also that they have to go through all of these different um uh like tests and like obstacles and kind of overcome themselves, and at the last point it was circumcision was like the final and most painful thing, and it required to be kind of almost like ripped away from the mother because the mother would not be able to stand, or like, she doesn't have the heart to be able to do that.
Mhm.
So for me, it was like such a cue of being like, "Oh, I need to make sure that like I'm a little heartless when it comes to that. That I'm because I don't want my boys to remain boys. I want them to be men, and like real strong, like kingly men. Like of all the archetypes, when you have all of them that are healthy and in their power, you stand residing and with justice and with discernment and with protecting the dominion and the women and all these things, you just have those qualities. So I was like, I want to raise a kingly man. And so that to me was like always so important that I love the fact that you broke down these age groups, because it was literally around the age of 14 that these rituals needed to be made. And so it's kind of hard nowadays to find in a modern society to find a place where boys can actually become men. But apparently there are a lot of these like sort of initiation sort of groups out there. And if anyone is raising boys, I highly recommend to go like do that. But one thing I wanted to go back to is to share a little bit about your profession, and like what was one of the decisions that you made when second baby came, when baby Theo came?
Yeah, so I'm trained as an archivist slash librarian, and I was
She's
working.
impeccable in her organization and penmanship, by the way.
I'm a
Let me talk.
very like organized person, so I guess like information management makes sense for me. I like to organize and manage things. But yeah, things. I'm not organized in every aspect of my life. So like you could see my closets are not very organized. um anyway, so yeah, I was working in libraries for over 10 years. And we had moved to our current community because of a job for me. But it was really hard after I had Hugo. I felt kind of torn. I felt, and I think all moms do, all working moms do. Like, I felt like I was never doing enough at work and I was not doing enough as a mom. And so then after Hugo turned 2, no, it was after he turned 1, my husband and I decided that the school year would be my last. So it was before he turned 2, and we knew around the time when he was turning 2 that we would start trying to have another baby. So we decided that I would stay home with him and then baby number 2. And it wasn't an easy decision. I think,
Mm.
you know, there's a lot of things that go into it and every person's situation is different. So I'm sure most moms feel like they want to make this decision.
I want to go into why that was difficult, particularly because of the environment that you were in. Describe the environment and the culture of the group of people you were around with that made this decision particularly difficult.
Oh, well, I mean, I worked in an all-girls school, a private all-girls school, and it was great. I really enjoyed the people that I worked with. Yes, can you go, please? Yeah. This is like motherhood. This is what
This is the reality, guys. This is the show right here.
um I loved everyone that I work with, and it was actually really great because there was a daycare connected to my school. So it was pre-K to 12, and I was working with the high school students. But so Hugo went to the preschool and the daycare when he was just like 4 or 5 months, and until he was almost 2. And that was great because I could go and I could check on him and they'd send me pictures and they'd text me and I'd see him, they'd take him on walks around the school and everything. But because that was there, most of the moms like took advantage of it and they had their kids in the daycare and they just worked. And they took kids up from, I think it was 3 months onward, they would take kids. So there were little tiny babies there, and which is great. It was really great. Everyone was so wonderful, and Hugo still remembers, like, we have all these, like, this binder that they put together, like, this was when I went to school, mommy, and, like, these were all, tell me who all my friends were, tell me who my teacher was, which is great. But it also made me, that summer before we made the decision, my husband and I were really talking intensely, like, are we doing this just because everybody in the culture around us sends their kids to daycare and just works crazily? Like, do we need me to work? Like, can we survive on one income? And, what's the benefit of having me stay home versus working? And the decision that we came to was that it's actually, at this period in our child's life, really, really beneficial for me to be with him. And that's where I wanted to be. And if we just budget and we make sure that we are, spending wisely and not living without like purchasing things without thinking, saving more, we could do it. And it was actually really good because it forced us to budget properly and meal plan and shop to our meal plan every week, and also just ask the question, like, when we think we need to purchase something, do I need this really? Like, is this more valuable, or is, like, me spending time with my family more valuable? Um, and yeah, I wanted to share that because that was something on a personal level that worked for our family, that we just came to that realization.
Mm.
Um, but I know everybody's situation is different. So what works for us wouldn't necessarily work for someone else. And I think moms, no matter what they're doing, whether they're working moms or they're stay-at-home moms, they're doing an amazing job. I feel like moms tend to judge each other for making decisions one way or the other. And I just want to say, you're amazing moms out there, no matter what you're doing. And you're, like, doing the best for your child, and you're giving them the best you have. And so I just wanted to say that because I'm sure when I share this, a lot of people feel like, I wish I could do that. But,
Mm.
so
For me,
um,
the thing that really stood out when you were sharing with me your internal struggle of making that decision was the fact that you worked for an all female private school with women, female teachers who were really all about women's empowerment and all these things. And you making a decision to stay home was going to be backward in their eyes, that you were taking a step back. That to me
yeah,
was,
it's so interesting. No one came out and said that, but you feel that way because everyone else is making a different choice. So no one
mm,
came out, and, like, everyone was like, "Oh, good for you," but everybody else is, like, not making that choice, you know? So you just
mm,
don't see a lot of people. I didn't see a lot of other people in the environment that I was working in making that choice to stay home,
mm,
and it wasn't. I was recommended by one of the administrators to talk to, because I was like, "I feel so, like, I don't know, it's hard for me to leave this job, and I feel so, guilty in some ways, like, leaving." And, I had these girls that I was working with, like, I was, like, their
mentoring.
mentor.
Yeah,
Um, and
it was
and
amazing.
she's like, "Oh, you should talk to, like, our, consulting psychologist." And he was a man who was working as a psychologist for, like, over 35 years. And he said something to me that made me feel so good, more than, like, what any of the other women colleagues had said to me. He was just like,
Hmm.
"In my 35 years of being a psychologist and working with working moms, I've never come across any mom who's regretted quitting her job to stay home with her kids." And he was
Mm,
like, "I've come across the opposite, but I've
yeah,
never come across
interesting.
anyone who's regretted that." So I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, that feels like," I just felt very confirmed talking to
Yeah,
him about
that
that.
is very
So
confirming. What a sweet dude. Like sometimes this is where I like it. This is where I love, because I had a really perhaps unhealthy perception of men, of like how they're not awakened, they're like not kind, or like they're not this, not that my brothers were like this, but it's just somehow this perception kind of formed. But they have also matured and grown a lot. But I think, yeah, I mean, this conversation is, it's odd. Like I didn't think that this was going to be quite like a main theme in our conversation, to talk about the love we have for the men in our life, or the love that
Mm.
we have for the boys in our life, and that relationship. And not all men are bad, not all men are this, and that even in moments of doubt, like, it's the men that lift us up and comfort us in our feminine decisions. And what a blessing that is when we see that, we recognize that, and we allow that to come in. Because I think a lot of women would reject that and push that away and be like, all men suck. So, like, if I'm making like a specific female decision about my body, about my uterus, about my babies, how could a man possibly offer me any solace or advice on this issue, you know?
Yeah,
So,
well,
yeah.
I think that's like, I mean, I really believe that men learn how to support women from their moms. They learn how to respect them, how to like, be comfortable around emotions and like how to identify emotions. So, yeah, I think that's the goal, right? Like when we're raising boys, to like raise future men who will be compassionate and supportive and feminist men, like, and I mean, they learn that from their moms, but they also have to see that modeled through their dads too. So that's also
Mhm.
important, like to feel on the same page as my husband with that. How are we talking about, how are we, even though they see me at home and doing like the work at home, how does Niaz talk about that to them? How does he thank me for that in front of them? Yeah, how does he actually take on some of the tasks? And how do I take on some of the tasks that he usually does? Not all the time, but like, and then we're saying, oh, mommy can do this too. Like, or daddy can make breakfast for us. Like, so, yeah, just being conscious of that. Like, even though we kind of fall into more of that, those like gendered roles with me at home with the boys, we are trying to be conscious of finding opportunities to make sure that like they realize that we women don't have to just stay at home, and that Hugo knows. I always like tell him, he's like mommy, sometimes he's like, mommy, where did I go to school? And I was like, oh, you went to school at the school where I used to work. What did you used to do? And I was like, I worked in the library. And like he knows the answer. He just like sometimes like me telling him. So reminding him that I used to work, and like that I had this conversation with him, that I made the decision, daddy and I made the decision that my work now is you and your brother. And that daddy's working for us and we're so thankful. And then but Niaz then comes and is like, mommy's working really hard today. She made this wonderful dinner. Thank you, mommy. What do you say, Hugo? Like, those kind of things. So we're
Yeah.
trying the best that we can.
So, what are some other examples in terms of other female gender or masculine, feminine energies, like when it comes to with toys and things like that? Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I grew up with sisters and, not interested in cars or sports at all.
And
And
what is my nephew most interested
yeah,
in?
it's funny because I had like everything. Like when he was little, like I didn't have especially a lot of cars or a lot of balls. Like he had blocks, he had a baby doll, he had all these different things, but he just gravitated towards balls and cars. And now he's obsessed with cars. He also likes
Obsessed.
balls. Yeah, he's obsessed with cars. Cars is the big thing. He can like name like the make and model of cars. And he
Like
knows more than me.
he taught me what a, a dump truck was, or like there was another kind of like truck that I
Oh,
had.
of like a front end loader or something.
Yeah.
Like he knows
I
all
was like,
the
I'm
construction
like,
vehicles.
I really don't know what these are called. Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah,
So
so I think there's
he's into
something to
balls too?
be. Yeah, he's into ball. He was really in the beginning, he loved, like, the ping pong balls because we have a ping
Mm.
pong table, and now he loves playing soccer, and he loves playing soccer with his imaginary friends these days. Like, it's so cute. We're like,
Mm.
Don't you wanna, like, play soccer with real friends?" And he's like, "No, I know how to play soccer with my imaginary friends." And we're like, "But when you play soccer, you need to learn how to pass the ball and play with people." So, hopefully that'll come, maybe next summer, I don't know. But it's really cute. I thought, I didn't expect it to be like, "Whoa, he's, like, obsessed with cars." Like, I thought it would be, like, more, like, general stuff, so
The only thing that I wanted to end it on was what advice do you have for me, about motherhood, if you have any?
okay, so for you, but and then for all the listeners or just for you specifically?
Both, like, for anyone who's about to become a mother or is not a mother yet and wants to become one, like, what advice would you have for them?
I don't know if this is advice, but well, I mean, I guess like the advice would be to like make sure you have a partner who you can communicate with really well and that you guys are on the same page and that you feel supported with
Mhm,
because really it's hard. Moms take on so much emotionally, so much of the emotional burden. So you need someone to be able to take some of that load, to share the load with you.
mm,
That's really important. But also, I just want to say motherhood has like been the biggest blessing of my life. Like I've learned so much about myself, and I feel like my heart has expanded so much. And um, I didn't know I was capable of so much patience and like so much love, like becoming a mother. So I I know it's not for everyone. I know not everyone makes the choice, but if you do, or if you're like debating, it's a wonderful experience.
That's a beautiful note to end on.
All right, thank you,
Alright.
Nahal.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
good
much, my
day.
love. Bye.
Bye.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. If you have any comments, do leave it in the blog. It would be wonderful to hear your thoughts. And if there's any follow-up questions that you have for Asiyih or for me for this specific episode, do leave it in the comments of the blogs of each episode. You can find it at www.yogaavecmoi.com/YAM podcast. And in the search bar, you can type in the number of the episode and you'll be able to find it easily and leave your comments down below. We can't wait to see you there and see you in the next episode.